Hi, everyone. Welcome to Both Sides of the Story. I'm your host, Alan Janae from CBS 4. Thank you for joining us. This is our final debate of our 4 preliminary rounds. They featured 8 students from 8 different high schools, and we've added a brand new element this year. We have added a consolation bracket, so you'll get a chance to see all of our students debate multiple times this season. On tonight's program, students from Cherry Creek High School and Eaglecrest High School face off for a spot in the semifinals. So let's meet our participants right now. First up is Genevieve Holliday, a senior at Cherry Creek High School. Let's meet Genevieve.
My name is Genevieve Holliday. I am a senior in high school, and I go to Cherry Creek High School. I've been debating for a little over 3 years now. I started as a freshman. Outside of debate, I enjoy tap dancing, skiing, and I'm very involved in my school community. A few months ago, I finished writing my first draft of a novel, and I'm editing that right now, and I hope to get that published in the future. I would like to thank my mom for always being there to support me, and of course the wonderful Miss Benham, our debate coach, and also the very knowledgeable Tom Pippin.
Genevieve is astounding. She's an amazing young woman with a brilliant mind and a kind heart. She's very compassionate. She reaches out to her peers and helps others when they're needed, and she loves to learn new things.
Now you've met Genevieve. Next, let's meet Mason Bachman, a senior at Eaglecrest High School. Here's his story.
I'm Mason Bachman. I'm a junior, so I'm in 11th grade, and I go to Eaglecrest High School. When I was a little kid, I'd say I was definitely pretty shy, actually. I used to be pretty introverted. I used to, never talk to that many people, just read a lot of books. Doing debate has definitely taught me how to be more outgoing just as a person, how to better interact with people, how to have better conversations. But I would also say it's definitely taught me, how to be more assertive and have better conversations when I'm trying to argue for the things that I really care about and believe in.
Mason is a very level-headed debater, and he's definitely a listener first and foremost. He listens so much in the debates to make sure that he knows what his opponents are saying, and because of that, I see him being really successful, because I always tell my students, my best debaters are my best listeners.
Now you've met Mason, 2 of the best debaters in our state. Also joining us, a special panel of experts who will offer their analysis of this debate today. They are Dominic Dezzutti, host of Colorado Decides, the election debate series produced in conjunction with CBS 4. He is joined today by Patricia Calhoun, editor of Westward and a founding member of the Colorado Inside Out panel. All right, time to set our ground rules. Each side will present their case, ask each other questions, and have a chance to offer rebuttals. When it's finished, we'll go to our illustrious panel for their own questions, and we'll find out who they felt offered the best argument. So let's get started. Here's the issue up for debate today. Should the United States substantially reduce its restrictions on legal immigration to the U.S.? And let's have our coin flip and get ourselves underway. Genevieve, I'm going to give you the call on this one. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads it is. You choose. What would you like?
I would like the affirmative.
Genevieve gets the affirmative. Mason gets the negative. Genevieve, as the proponent during this round, the floor is now yours for 3 minutes to get things started. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I affirm that the United States should substantially reduce its restrictions on legal immigration to the United States for 3 main reasons. The economy would benefit from it, our social safety net depends on it, and it is simply the right thing to do. My first point is that substantially reducing restrictions on legal immigration would be extremely beneficial to our economy. Immigrants create jobs and economic growth in America by contributing to new consumer markets, becoming entrepreneurs, and attracting investment. According to the Wharton School of Business, increasing legal immigration to 1.6 million people per year would increase the GDP, the number of jobs, the fortunes of Social Security, and would increase the size of the US economy. By 2050, GDP per capita would be 3% higher if immigration is increased by 50% than if immigration stayed the same as it is now. Legal immigrants' contributions to entrepreneurship are just as impressive. According to a 2017 study by the Center for American Entrepreneurship, among Fortune 500 companies, 43% were founded or co-founded by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. meaning that 215 of the most valuable companies in the United States were created by legal immigrants. The occurrence of first or second generation immigrant founders was even higher among the largest Fortune 500 companies. And as the cherry on top, legal immigrants play an important role in increasing capital investments. My second point is that increasing immigration would help save our precarious social safety net. According to the US Governmental Accountability Office, Social Security has remained the bedrock of retirement security, ensuring workers against the loss of income due to retirement, death, or disability. However, decreasing US birth rates and mortality rates, combined with growing retirement rates, have created a Social Security crisis in which the administration's $2.9 trillion reserves will be completely gone by 2035. And the solution? The Social Security Administration itself has pointed to too many beneficiaries and too few contributing workers as the source of their current crisis, a problem that can be offset through increased legal immigration and thus reduced immigration restrictions. Indeed, a 2019 Time magazine analysis noted that immigration reduces the Social Security deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars. The greater the number of immigrants we let into work and pay into the system, the more likely retirees are to not have to open cans of dog food for their dinner. My final point is that substantially increasing immigration is the right thing to do. Take the case of asylum, a way of entry into the country which, if approved, eventually becomes legal immigration. According to the US Citizenship and Immigration Services, every year people come to the US to seek protection, also known as asylum, because they have suffered or fear they will suffer due to their religion, nationality, race, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. In the United States, we are fortunate to live in a country that is relatively free of such persecutions and with freedom of speech and religion guaranteed by the Constitution. We are thus obligated to increase access to our country to people that not only need admittance, but will also significantly enrich America, both economically and culturally. Thus, because it would benefit our economy, help save our social safety net, and fulfill our moral duties, I urge that the United States should substantially reduce restrictions on legal immigration into the United States.
All right, Genevieve, you'll have to wrap it up there. That's your 3 minutes. All right, Mason, you now have 2 minutes for any questions and cross-examination. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So my first question is for helping Social Security. How much money do migrants contribute to Social Security programs?
According to Time, it's about hundreds of billions of dollars each year.
Okay, thank you. And so are those numbers taking place already in the status quo?
To a degree, yes, but by increasing levels of immigration, you are thus going to supplement all of the current loss in income we are putting into Social Security because of declining retirement rates and birth rates.
Okay, but it's not enough to offset the difference right now.
Right, because we don't have high enough levels of immigration because our immigration has decreased in recent years.
Okay, thank you. And another question about your third contention, the right thing to do. Do you know how many immigrants under asylum the U.S. takes in right now?
Approximately 20% or approximately 17% was fiscal year 2018, the number of asylees that the United States admitted out of 1.1 million a total.
Okay, and is 17.7% of asylum seekers too few considering all the other countries that also offer asylum programs?
Certainly, because for many of the asylum seekers at our border, the United States is the only option because they can't afford plane tickets anywhere else, and other countries simply don't provide the same benefits.
All right, Mason, we'll have to end the questions right there. Mason, you have the negative. The question, should the United States substantially reduce its restrictions on legal immigration? Let's hear your side. 3 minutes. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. All right. Immigration is easily one of the most hotly debated issues in modern American society, but the current set of restrictions surrounding immigration is the best possibility. I stand in firm negation of today's topic because by reducing restrictions on legal immigration, the U.S. will see detrimental effects to workers and increased income inequality. Through voting in the affirmative on today's topic, U.S. workers will suffer. Increases in the amount of immigrant labor in the economy produce a negative effect on native wages. A paper written by the International Journal of Social Economics found that immigrant flow depresses average weekly earnings in the long run. By reducing restrictions surrounding legal immigration to the United States and increasing the flow of immigrants to the United States by extension, wages of Americans currently within the labor force will decline. Decreases in wages will be accompanied by a decrease in available jobs, as there are 18 million immigrants living in the US who arrived in January 2000 or later, but only 9.3 million jobs being added over that time period, according to the Center for Immigration Studies. There are more new immigrants in the country on work visas than there are jobs to be filled. This issue disproportionately affects low-skilled American workers, since Gardner of the Hill writes that of the 2.7 million foreign-born persons in the workforce in 2017, the overwhelming majority filled low-skill occupations. The negative effects of increased immigration flow disproportionately affect low-skilled workers. A study by Harvard professor George Borjas finds that the effect of the Mariel boat lift, a giant shock to Miami's labor market that increased the size of its population by 7% in 42 days, finds large negative wage effects concentrated on Americans with less than a high school degree. Through shifting from the status quo, immigration jeopardizes the wages of U.S. employees who are already subjected to poor wages. Secondly, reducing restrictions surrounding immigration increase income inequality in the United States. Immigration, especially an influx of low-skilled workers decreasing the wage of the employee, increases income inequality. When looking at income inequality, a more recent finding, according to the Cato Institute, is that immigrants increase wealth inequality by their effect on the price of real estate in American cities. Immigrants, as a result of the brain drain and low-skilled labor importation, have a skill distribution that is either high-skilled or low-skilled, with little in the middle. A study by Arrhenius and Zavodny found that immigrants' bimodal skill distribution, with clustering at the top and bottom of the U.S. skill distribution, has widened the overall income distribution. The increased presence of immigrants in the United States is exacerbating income inequality, which has already seen an increase of 20% from 1980 to 2016. By increasing the flow of immigrants through tightening restrictions, these problems are worsened. Income inequality can be directly correlated to mortality, with a study from the National Institute of Health finding that areas with high income inequality and low average income had excess mortality of 139.8 deaths per 100,000 compared with areas with low inequality and high income. The magnitude of this mortality difference is comparable to the combined loss of human life from lung cancer, diabetes, motor vehicle crashes, HIV infection, suicide, and homicide in 1995. Income inequality can be diverted and decreased by remaining in the status quo and choosing to vote in the negative today. It is because of the negative effects on workers and the increase in income inequality that I strongly encourage a vote on today's topic and on the resolution as a whole. Thank you very much for your time.
Mason, thank you very much. Genevieve Holliday from Cherry Creek. 2 minutes now for your questions and cross-examination. Ready, set, go.
Perfect. So the George J. Borjas study that you cite with the Mariel boat lift, wasn't the population increased by 22% in Miami?
The source that I found says that it increased by 7% over 42 days. It might have increased by 22% as an aggregate, but in the 42-day period, which is being cited, you see a 7% increase. And what's more, an increase by 22% could further crowd the labor market and further decrease job opportunities for low-skill, low-wage American workers.
Okay, but realistically, as a whole country, would we see a 7% increase or 22% increase in immigration over a 42-day period?
We as an entire country would not, but the message still stands that when we see immigration increase, which it would in the affirmative world, we see access to jobs for low-skilled workers and employee wages both fall.
Okay, so are low-skilled immigrants more likely to compete with natives, or more likely to compete with other low-skilled workers? Or sorry, low-skilled immigrant workers?
So what we see is there's a low-skilled job market as an aggregate, be it low-skilled jobs like agriculture, construction, things that a lot of Americans who are lacking a high school degree are forced to take. And what we see is by crowding the labor market with more, regardless of what path they choose to pursue, eventually all routes are going to be filled up by at least some capacity.
Okay, and one last question. So the majority of immigrants that come into the United States, are they high-skilled or are they low-skilled?
From what I've seen, the majority are low-skilled immigrants who come to the United States on H-1B and H-2B visas, which are usually low-skilled visas for employment related to agriculture or not related to agriculture.
Wrap up that round of questions right now. As the affirmative, Genevieve, you now have 2 minutes for a rebuttal. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So I'd first like to touch on my opponent's first point, which is that U.S. workers will suffer. And they say that a negative effect on workers will occur and depress average weekly flow of income. However, according to the National Academy of Sciences, a study done by them, immigrants are actually, or low-skilled immigrants are actually more likely to compete against other low-skilled immigrants than they are against native-born workers. What's more, according to the American Action Forum in 2018, the percent of new arrivals to the United States with at least a bachelor's degree has been consistently rising and is now almost 50% of immigrants to the United States. So right now, that's not really an issue in the United States in terms of it affecting low-skilled workers, because most immigrants are actually competing against other low-skilled immigrants than they are native workers. Additionally, the Mariel Boatlift example that my opponent brought up isn't applicable because it was a 7%, or according to what I have, 22% increase in the population of one city over a 42-day period. And this is simply not going to happen across the United States. And the reason my opponent is using this example is because it is the most severe of its kind. So we won't actually see that play out on a large scale. Now, their second point is that income inequality will increase. However, according to the American Action Forum, the broad consensus of existing literature is that immigration does not significantly contribute to income inequality. Research suggests that the impact of immigration is small and less than the effect of technological displacement and broader demographic trends. So if we actually want to combat income inequality in this country, immigration is not the right way to do so, and we should instead reap the economic benefits of immigrants by letting more immigrants in, rather than trying to fix a problem that's not even caused by more immigrants. And in general, when you look back to my points, you'll see that the net gain of immigrants through the economy and through moral obligations, as well as strengthening our social safety net, outweighs any harms presented on the negative. Thank you.
That'll have to end that right there. Should the United States substantially reduce its restrictions on legal immigration? You have Genevieve with the affirmative, Mason with the negative. Mason, right now, 3 minutes to respond and close. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. So I would like to begin by going over the first of my opponent's points, which is that it benefits the economy. As I stated in my case, the Department of the Senate states that every fiscal year, not the Department of the Senate, George Borjas, in his study on the Mariel Boatlift, found that a 7% population increase over the course of 42 days, which as my opponent stated, is not entirely reflective of the U.S. as a whole, but does reflect what can happen through the increase of immigration. What we see here in the example of the Mariel Boatlift is a large increase correlated with a large increase, large negative wage effects correlated to a large shock to Miami's labor market through an increase of 7%. But what we see is, even if the effects are diminished through a decreasing of this scale, the effect still persists and becomes a persistent issue that continually affects. We're still going to see wage declines on American workers with less than a high school degree. And onto my opponent's next point, the social safety net. The social safety net is likely going to be preserved. Immigration is not going to contribute enough to the economy to offset the detriment and the lack of social safety being provided to the economy. And now, to reinforce my own points, the effects on the economy. As I said, employment will decrease as according to my statistic, there were 18 million immigrants living in the U.S. who arrived in January 2000 or later, but there were only 9.3 million jobs added over this time. There are more immigrants coming into the country as of right now than there are jobs being added to fill positions for immigrants. What this means is that the U.S. is already admitting more immigration than its job market has the capacity to fill, so we're still going to see employment suffer as a result. And on to income inequality. We see that immigrants' bimodal skill distribution, which is being increased through more getting bachelor's degrees and more being able to pursue a college education, but still having many who come on low-skilled H-2B visas, we see that there is a negative economic impact. Now, we see that there's still going to be income inequality. Now, on to my closing statement. When we consider the negative effect for native wages, and when we consider the negative effect for income inequality and the negative effect for employment and the absence of economic benefits, and considering the as I said in my questioning, the lack of that the U.S. is already taking in 17% of asylum seekers. The U.S. is already doing its part as a actor in the global community to do its part for asylum seekers, and that social safety will not be saved enough. I can not condone a vote in the affirmative, and I strongly encourage a vote in the negation. Thank you.
Mason Bachman from Eaglecrest High, thanks very much. Genevieve Holliday from Cherry Creek High. Your 1 minute close. The topic, immigration. Go right ahead.
So to boil it down, we should reduce restrictions on legal immigration for three main reasons. First of all, it benefits the economy, it helps our social safety net, and three, it benefits our moral conscience. So in terms of the economy, income inequality is ultimately not going to be something to take into account in today's debate, because the American Action Forum says that there's a negligible, or immigration itself has a negligible impact on income inequality. Although it has risen in the time that immigrants have come into the United States, this is more correlation rather than causation. Additionally, the net benefit of immigrants you see coming into the United States is extremely high. You'll see a 3% increase in GDP if we actually reduce restrictions, as well as low-skilled natives will not be hurt because low-skilled immigrants are simply competing against other low-skilled immigrants. And finally, it's very important to remember that our social safety net will be greatly benefited by increased immigration, as well as our moral conscience and letting more refugees and asylees into this country to eventually become legal immigration. Thus, I can only see a vote in the affirmation.
Should the United States substantially reduce its restrictions on legal immigration? You've heard the debate. Genevieve, Mason, thanks very much for that great debate. Let's go to our panel of experts right now to get their thoughts on what they saw. Dominic, take it away.
Mason, I think you accurately pointed out that this kind of debate over immigration has been taking place in this country, I think, as soon as we were a country. So you both did a fantastic job at tackling a question that's been a vociferous debate in this country for over 200 years. But your debate is not over. We're going to have some questions for you as well. Patty, you have your question for Genevieve.
Genevieve, you mentioned that asylum seekers and other immigrants want to come here because of the benefits, but aren't there also costs providing those benefits to the immigrants, education, healthcare, and other issues?
Yes, there are of course costs, but multiple studies, including ones from the National Academies of Scientists, show that the cost of an immigrant in the United States is generally net negligible in terms of what the government is paying for them, and they actually pay more into government programs such as Social Security than they receive benefits from it.
And Genevieve, I want to follow up with a point about this whole idea of, well, we can reduce restrictions, which means we can take on more and more legal immigrants. But is this further expansion eventually going to find a filling point, or is the United States a bottomless bucket where more and more people can simply come to our shores?
Oh, for sure. We definitely would have to put a cap on the number of immigrants in the United States, but that's somewhat implied in reducing restrictions, because if we reduce restrictions, we still will have restrictions in place. So we still will have good, solid policy in order to make sure that the flow of immigrants into the United States is stable and not overwhelming.
All right, Mason, you're not off the hook. We have some questions for you. Patty, your question for Mason.
Well, Mason, you mentioned that more immigrants came than jobs were created. But aren't some of those immigrants children or spouses or people who are not going to be working in jobs? So I'm curious about that. And also, wouldn't some of them, if you increase immigration, you talked about high-level, low-level jobs, wouldn't some come in who are in the middle?
What we see, as I said in one of my sources, is that immigrants have a bimodal skill distribution, which means it's predominantly either high academic level, like something along the lines of a PhD or something in that range, or low academic level, meaning below a high school education. And that bimodal skill distribution means that they are primarily filling those two skill groups. There is some in the middle, but it's largely at the top and the bottom. And in terms of the second part of that question, what we found was that it was 18 million immigrants for 9.3 million jobs being produced in the economy. And what we see is that according to the Pew Research Center, 73% of immigrants are within the working age. So that's still, as 9 divided by 18, that's 50%. That's still 20% of immigrants who are coming in and not having a job created to accompany their presence.
Mason, one of the points you make in your case is that if these restrictions are reduced, then it's going to lower wages for all U.S. workers. But I guess I'd add the second half of that whole economy point there, that if corporations are paying lower salaries, that they have actually room to expand, would grow an economy. So Corporation X, while in the short term paying smaller salaries, could grow, and thereby more people being hired, whether they be legal immigrants or United States citizens. Isn't a greater advantage for a corporation meaning greater growth and thereby a greater economy for the United States?
Well, what we see in the example that I provided is that we actually see native wages decrease in the long run. So in the short term, it would likely be an increase in hiring and an increase in corporate profits. But what we see is that as time goes on, the wages of native workers in the United States actually see an aggregate decrease. So every single native worker is making less. And even though there are more immigrants working for the corporations and the corporations are making more money, the native workers are not standing to profit from that.
Alan, the country hasn't figured this out over 200 years. You got to give us at least a couple moments to see if we can figure out this debate.
All right, but your time is short. We're going to give our panel a moment to consider who they felt won this debate. That'll give me a moment to let you know that we're just beginning our new expanded season of both sides of the story. Our 2020 tournament will feature 12 total debates, including a full consolation bracket, so you will get a chance to see all of our students debate multiple times this fall. And with these two, we'd love to see them again. To catch up on any of the episodes, you can go to pbs12.org. All right, Dominic, do you have a decision?
I think, like the country, we could debate this for quite a while, including the winner of this debate. Both Patty and I want to let both of you know, Genevieve and Mason, you both did a fantastic job. And personally, I was very impressed with how you were able to bring up a variety of evidence and citations right in the middle of different arguments, including your rebuttal. You both did a great job. This was a difficult decision, but it is our job to come up with a winner. So, Genevieve, we decided in a very close race, you are the winner of today's debate. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And Alan, back to you.
Well, congratulations to you, Genevieve, and both of you gave our viewers a wonderful debate tonight. You should both be very proud. Now, Genevieve Holliday, you're going to go on to compete against the winner from our other debate featuring students from Northfield High School and West Early College. And Mason Bachman, we're going to see you again in our consolation bracket debates. There's some strong debaters there, too. That's all the time we have for our program tonight. I do want to thank our excellent students for accepting our challenge and participating in our debate, handling a really tough topic. I also want to thank our esteemed panel for sharing their thoughts. And finally, we want to thank you for tuning in. It is the support of viewers like you and our sponsors who help to make this show a reality. You can catch up on past episodes of this program at pbs12.org. You can catch me on CBS 4 for all the latest news and information impacting Colorado. And for everybody here at PBS 12, I'm Alan Janae. Thanks for watching. And that is Both Sides of the Story.